It's time for your Low Country real estate market update. It's the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show. Brian is one of the top 1% real estate agents in Charleston. Find him online at listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com. Or call him at 843-345-1273. Now, broadcasting from the WTMA studios, here's your host, Brian Beatty.
Good morning, Charleston, and welcome to another edition of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com. I'm your host, Brian Beatty. 8 years I've been on this program giving you my opinion of the real estate market as somebody that has sold real estate at a high level here in the Charleston area. I have a team of nearly 30 people. We've sold over 1,000 homes here in the Charleston market, about $1 billion worth of real estate, and I relay my experiences to you, the listener, the consumer, so that you're informed, so that you understand what's happening in the market. We can separate all of this buzz and all the news that you might be reading written by people that are kind of moonlighting as bloggers, and separate all of that information from what's actually happening, boots on the ground, pulse on the market information. So that's what I bring to the table on this show. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you want to reach out to me, if at any point in time you're listening to this program and you'd like to have a personal conversation with me, not call into the show, but just call me directly and have a conversation about your interest in buying, selling, or investing in real estate, my number is 843-400-8009. That's 843-400-8009. You can call or text that number, or you can check us out online at listingsincharleston.com. A lot of great information on there, more information on the value of your home. If you input your address and some information, we can actually tell you through our website how many buyers we actually have for your home right now based on how many people are searching for properties like yours, which is a really cool feature. And of course, you can go to the radio show tab, learn more about myself and my team, listen to a bunch of these shows. If there's anything you missed, some great topics on there. So listingsincharleston.com. All right, I want to talk first this morning, and sometimes the content for the show just kind of flows naturally based on what happens during the week. Just in the course of a week selling real estate. We've had a lot of conversations with folks this week, which we have had for, years. But for whatever reason, this week it was just hyper-focused on pre-foreclosures on Zillow. What are they? People, I think, are mistakenly assuming that these are indeed foreclosures or bank-owned properties that you can make immediate offers on. And get immediate responses. So I want to take you through this. I want you guys to understand what a pre-foreclosure is as defined by Zillow, and then some of these other websites that offer this kind of information. I think what you're going to see as, and maybe not so much right now, although I do think there is absolutely a backlog of distressed property, and I think that backlog is going to build over time as these forbearances come due, and let's say somebody has taken 12 months off from making payments with the understanding, the promise that, hey, after 12 months, you owe us all 12 months, on that 13th month. It's not like those problems went away. It's not like there's payment forgiveness. It's a delay. And a lot of folks aren't going to have the money. So what do? Well, those are going to likely turn into loan modifications, and there's a 65% default rate on loan modifications. And so, without getting too deep into, all of that, what's going to happen is you're going to see bank-owned properties. You're going to see short sales. You're going to see bank-initiated short sales. And the buyers, of course, that have been looking around for the past more than a year at this point, wondering where all the inventory is, or honing in on things like pre-foreclosures on Zillow. And so first and foremost, what is a pre-foreclosure as defined by Zillow? Let's start there. A pre-foreclosure is any property that has received a lis pendens. So then, of course, that begs the question, what is a lis pendens? Well, a lis pendens is literally translated from Latin as suit pending. It's an official notice to the public that a lawsuit involving a claim on a property has been filed and must be filed in conjunction with a lawsuit. So it can only be filed if a claim is related specifically to the property. However, it specifies that the owner of the property must assume any litigation associated with it. So It's connected to the concept that a buyer of a property must assume any litigation that exists pertaining to the property. If a bank is suing the owner of a lot and a new buyer purchases that lot, then the new owner must face the lawsuit. Sale of the property does not prevent the plaintiff from seeking redress via litigation. So this is why it's really important that you understand what you're about to get yourself into if a lis pendens is something you're really interested in, or a pre-foreclosure on Zillow is something you're really interested in. So how does this work? So a lis pendens, really what it does is it provides constructive notice or a warning to the prospective homebuyers that the ownership of a property is in dispute and litigation is pending. Can only be filed if a claim is related specifically to the property. So by filing a lis pendens, an individual or an entity is essentially protecting its claim to the title pending the outcome of the lawsuit. It's only lifted, the lis pendens is only lifted once that lawsuit has been settled. So what are some different scenarios in which a lis pendens can be used? Well, the most common form is just notice of default. It's almost always used by lenders when you as a homeowner become delinquent. Banks use the procedure to put the public on notice that a property is in foreclosure. Other types of creditors whose debt is secured by the property can, of course, also foreclose on a property, which would be something like an HOA fee. Yes, your HOA can sue you and foreclose on you, provide you with notice of default. We used to see it back in 2008 after the market crashed. You'd have an HOA lien on the property, which you would have to negotiate in addition to maybe a short sale with the first and sometimes second mortgage. And we're going to get into that, I think, as it gets, a little closer to the time that's going to become more commonplace. We're not seeing a ton of foreclosures right now, but you'd be surprised. We are seeing them, and they are ramping up in other areas of the country. People trying to sell their home for less than the total amount owed on their mortgage. That's what a short sale is. So when else can a lis pendens be used? Well, it can be used in a divorce. It's often filed in divorce where the distribution of real estate hasn't been settled. It's common in cases where a property is listed in the name of one spouse and the other spouse says, hey, I own a portion of that. It's a marital asset, so it gets tied up in litigation. It could also be, and I've seen this before, the inclusion or exclusion of a purchase or sale of property. So let's say that buyer A and a seller enter into a contract, but the seller ends up selling it to buyer B. They basically just strategically default on the contract with the first buyer and sell it to somebody else. Well, that first buyer is going to sue that seller, making it really difficult for the seller to actually sell the house to the second buyer. And we don't need to get into the legality of all of that, but that's one way in which it can be used. We can also, we've already talked about how lis pendens can be filed for HOA or regime fees not being made. But then there's also mechanics liens. In South Carolina, and we're talking, by the way, about what could cause a lis pendens to be filed, which is what Zillow needs to see as the trigger to include a property on their pre-foreclosure list. So in South Carolina, construction liens, which we call mechanics liens, are automatically created by statute to protect anyone to whom a debt is due for labor performed or furnished, for materials furnished, and are actually used in the erection, alteration, or repair of a building or structure upon real estate or the boring and equipment of wells. So that's the actual code. So if work or materials are connected to building or altering a property, then there's a mechanics lien that's going to get filed. And so if that amount of money that you owe that contract, if you do a bunch of renovations to your house, basically if you renovate your home and you don't pay your contractor, that mechanics lien is going to run with that property. It's going to cause a lis pendens to be filed, and It's going to trigger a pre-foreclosure alert so that when you as a buyer are looking around online, especially when you go to somewhere like Zillow and you see these pre-foreclosures and you start inquiring about them, it's important for you to know that in most cases, these properties are not actually for sale. And as I just read, there are a litany of reasons why Zillow might lump them all together into what they call a pre-foreclosure. It's not always because they're behind on their mortgage payments. It's not always because they're in trouble financially. So there you have it. That's how they define a pre-foreclosure. Now, let's say that you see a property and you're interested in it. You're on Zillow and you see this pre-foreclosure for $250,000 and everything else in the neighborhood is selling for $350,000. Well, how are they getting the price if it's not for sale? It's a great question. Zillow has done a really good job of kind of protecting and holding secret the formula that they use to come up with their quote-unquote Zestimate, which is an entirely separate topic on how wrong Zestimates can be. Sometimes they're right. Most of the time they're wrong because they just don't have the information they need in order to accurately price a property. They don't know what the inside of that property looks like. Frankly, they don't know what the outside of that property looks like. They don't know what sort of renovations you've done. You don't know if there's a big hole in the ceiling. So how can they possibly price that property effectively? If they're going off of county data, city data, and recorded sales and then just applying an algorithm to it, don't get me wrong, they can get close, but my guess is that it's mostly luck. You know, that you've got the perfect set of homes that had correct criteria that then spit out a number that is reasonable in comparison to what everything else has sold for. But the bottom line is Zestimates are flawed in that they don't know what the condition of the home is and they don't know the level of upgrades in that home, both of which make big differences when pricing a property. So let's say that you're a buyer and you're interested in distressed property. Well, there are ways for us to find distressed property, but we need to vet those properties first. We need to have the conversation with the homeowner. We need to figure out where they are in their process and their kind of journey, whether they have an interest in selling or not. And I think that over time, we're going to see more and more of these distressed properties. So if you're an investor or if you're just a buyer and the goal here is to get a good deal, there are certain ways of doing that. And the best way of doing it is by preventing, as best you can, a multiple offer situation on a property, by being the one that's there first. We talked a lot about this last show. I'm going to give you a quick summary right after we take a break. But if this is something you're interested in, if you want more information on distressed properties, short sales, foreclosures, then do me a favor, text the word foreclosure to 843-400-8009. That's 843-400-8009. And I'll send you some information that I've put together on better understanding that process. If you're going to buy a distressed property, even if you go to the auction, which we would really need to talk about that because that in and of itself is a dangerous proposition. You really need to understand that. But if you want more information on just purchasing distressed property, or maybe you're in a situation where things are not looking so great and it makes sense to sell now before things get worse. I have been there with, well over 100 people in helping them negotiate their own short sales. So if that's a position that you're in and you want to have a private conversation with me, give me a call, 843-400-8009. Text the word foreclosure to that same number, 843-400-8009. Or check us out online. But if you text foreclosure to 843-400-8009, I will send you some information on the purchase and sale of distressed property so you just better understand what you're about to get yourself into. So stick around, folks. This is the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com.
Visit Brian Beatty's website at listingsincharleston.com. The Brian Beatty Real Estate Show continues next on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA. 1250 WTMA. Now, here's more of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA.
Welcome back, folks, as the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show continues here on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com. I'm your host, Brian Beatty, and we're going to talk about investing right now. We haven't done that in a little while. There's a lot of investors in the market right now, a lot of people looking. We work with a lot of them. I mean, we do, just in July, we will probably put probably about 30 properties on the market that are investor driven. So we're in it pretty big. We understand it. We understand it at an extremely high level. I'm an investor myself. I've worked with investors for years and years and years and years and years. And so I thought what would be interesting, because we obviously just talked about pre-foreclosures, which not only are of an interest to buyers that are just trying to, do anything they can to find opportunity, trying to flip over as many rocks as possible to uncover inventory, right? Inventory is still low. It has been going up a little bit in our market, which is nice to see, as it just kind of balances out a little bit. But I'll tell you, almost anything that we're putting on the market right now is getting multiple offers. We had and I don't really understand some of the properties that are just sitting, unless they are specialty properties, unless they're in high end price ranges where just the number of buyers for it naturally are going to be much less. But kind of your everyday properties, the ones where there have been other homes that have sold that are similar to it, they should be selling, right? And so if they're not, then that's something we're going to talk about here in just a little while. But as we, like we just put a property under contract in about a week, multiple offers on it. It was on the market for a year and a half before that. So if that's, I guess sidebar, but if you're thinking of selling your property, or you tried selling it and it didn't work, and you've just kind of given up on this process. Remember last week we were talking about kind of the different stages that people go through in this market. They go from, being really, really interested to really frustrated, right? First they have, I think it was fear of missing out. So they had FOMO, which leads to frustration, which leads to forget about it. This market is too hard. It's too tough. It's too hard for me to kind of balance the process of selling my home and buying another. I can't really find what I like. And it's just easier for me to not do anything, even though I'd actually really like to move. So if you're in that position and nothing is obviously forcing you to move, which is what so many people have agreed is their kind of position on all of this. Nothing is pushing them out of their house. They don't have to move. They sure would like to, and it makes sense for them to. They just don't feel like competing in a seller-driven market. Well, if that's you, I'm telling you, we have a large list of buyers for property that are ready to purchase a home like yours, should it go on the market. And we have a lot of sellers that are in the same position. So if you'll just allow us to see if we can match up your wants and needs with a seller's wants and needs, or vice versa, it might be a really nice and easy way to facilitate a transaction. That's what I think agents have really gotten away from, that makes a huge difference in a market like this. But anyways, we're talking about investors. So let me get back on track here, because they're going to look at things like pre-foreclosures. They're going to start to respond to some of these websites, these kind of clickbait websites that ask you to pay to see a list of foreclosure properties. And here's, I think, what's really important to understand. Once this stuff starts happening, and it will, don't get me wrong, and I'm willing to, obviously say that out loud here, there will be entities that will start selling lists of foreclosures. You will have to pay for that. By the time you get that information, you might be able to pick off something here and there, but it's public knowledge. Everybody knows about it. It's more competition, just like we have right now with basically any property that hits the market. So you want to, as an investor, figure out a way to get in front of somebody before someone else does. And I'm just here to tell you that even that is going to be very challenging right now. I met with someone else this week that owns several investment properties, and on essentially any property they own, it's tough for them to go more than a week without getting some sort of solicitation by someone saying they want to buy the house. So it's very saturated right now. Having said that, they're out there. I mean, I have a deal under contract right now that I'll close on in likely the next 30 days. That is a flip opportunity, and so long as we can control the cost associated with renovating it and not get too crazy, then it will be a win-win situation for the seller and for me as the investor. So I thought it might be helpful for you as a listener to understand some of the questions that I would ask you if you want to meet with me and you want to talk about being an investor. And I do want you to understand that we as agents come across all different forms of quote-unquote investors just in the course of our daily conversations with folks. I'm looking for a good deal. Just because you're looking for a good deal isn't necessarily consistent with you labeling yourself as an investor. So what we need to understand is really several things. And so the questions that we would ask would first and foremost be, have you invested in real estate before? Not have you bought a home for yourself and your family or sold a home and bought another, but have you actually invested in property, either as a flip or a buy and hold? Where did you invest? Was it local or was it somewhere else? What were those market conditions like, consistent, and how did those compare to market conditions here and now? Did you flip? Did you buy and hold? Have you done both? What sort of success did you see with your previous investments? And then we're going to start to ask a few more specific questions. And these are things that, if you're listening and you're curious to either get into real estate investing or you kind of label yourself as an investor right now, maybe you've done it a time or two, maybe some good questions for you to consider and think about, so that when an agent that really understands how to work with an investor starts asking you these questions, you know how to respond. You've thought about where you want to invest, how you're going to do it, so on and so forth. So, one of the questions that we ask is, what areas or segments of this market are you focused on investing in, or where would you not invest? Geographically speaking, where are you focused on? Where do you want to avoid? And then this is probably one of the most important questions we ask. What investment criteria do you use to determine whether or not you want to invest in a particular property? I mean, more specifically, what is your required rate of return, and what's your preferred method for calculating that? Is it cash on cash return? Is it cap rate? Is it before or after tax? We've got some fantastic tools that shows you the actual after tax net ROI after taking into consideration things like your mortgage interest deduction if you're getting a mortgage, and depreciation, and the ability for equity to essentially be bought down through payments, through rental payments, through tenants, and so on and so forth. And so we've got this great calculator that shows the actual ROI on a property after tax, so that you can compare it to something like the after tax ROI on owning stocks. We as agents, I don't know of very many agents that actually have the ability to help you look at a property and compare it in an apples to apples fashion to something like owning stocks. What most agents do is they say, well, you can buy it for, $100,000 and, you're going to make $10,000 in rent on it a year. So it's a 10% return on investment. No, it is not. There's way more that goes into that calculation that they have missed, that mean actual differences in your ROI. So, what sort of level of experience do you as an investor have with that? Have you consulted with a CPA? Do you want to pay cash for these investments? Do you have access to capital? Are you going to borrow the money through a mortgage? You're going to get short-term funding? Do you need recommendations for things like that? In addition to running a real estate team and doing this radio show, I also invest in real estate. I buy and hold if I find a good deal. I flip properties if I find good deals. I lend money to other investors to do the same thing if they find good deals. So I kind of attack things from several different angles so that I can use my knowledge of real estate to help me acquire wealth in real estate. I mean, that's really one of the reasons why I got into real estate, probably the main reason why I got into real estate in the first place. And yes, that sounds a little self-serving. Maybe your expectation listening to this program is that, when asked why I got into real estate, it's because I give the answer of, well, I just love helping people and finding their dream home and blah, blah, blah. And, look, of course I love doing that. I wouldn't have been doing this for 16 years had I not been passionate about helping people. Of course I am. But I am passionate as well about using my knowledge of the market and transactions and exposing myself to enough opportunity to create generational wealth through real estate ownership so that myself and my family are taken care of and financially secure. That's one of the benefits of doing what I do, is that we get to use the income we generate by helping people to then help ourselves. But that comes first, helping people. So if you're an investor, if you're thinking about getting into investing, if you just don't really know where to start, we coach people to become investors. A lot of our past clients have become investors, and now they're benefiting from, what we like to call mailbox money, because they were open to the idea of using real estate to create wealth for themselves. So if that's something that interests you, you want to learn more about investing in real estate. Maybe you're an investor right now, you need access to some more deals. Like I said, we'll probably put 30 or more investor-based properties on the market just this month alone. So we understand the process. If you'd like more information on it, you're an investor yourself, maybe you need to sell a property fairly quickly, we have access to cash. I will buy it for cash. We have other investors that will purchase it if I won't. So there should never be a reason why your property goes back to the bank. We can either negotiate with the bank or with the person trying to foreclose on you. But either way, give us a chance to help you and create a win-win situation. If that's something you're interested in, give me a call, 843-400-8009. That's 843-400-8009. You can go to listingsincharleston.com, contact us there, look at the properties we have for sale, learn more about us. All kinds of great stuff on that site, listingsincharleston.com. Stick around. We'll be right back with more of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com.
Hear the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show every Saturday morning at 9 and each Sunday morning at 10 on 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com. 1250 WTMA. You're listening to the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com.
Welcome back, folks, as the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show continues here on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com. I always like to just take a moment and say thank you to those of you that listen to the show and rely on the information within it. I really do appreciate it. Those of you that call and ask questions, it's part of why we do this show, of course, is to just help people connect the dots, whether they need a contractor recommendation or maybe you're a first-time home buyer and you're kind of nervous to talk to somebody about the process because you know how competitive it is and you don't want to make it sound like you're going to be a handful. We had a buyer that came into our office that they came in this week and they had canceled 3 times on the agent that was supposed to be meeting with them on my team. And when they asked why, they're like, we just know how crazy this market is, and honestly, we kind of just chickened out. We were nervous that you weren't going to give us the time and attention that we feel we're going to need. And we know that you do a lot of deals, blah, blah, blah. And it was so nice to talk with them and help them understand that, look, we help anyone and everyone, no matter if you're a first-time home buyer, first-time home seller, high-end luxury seller. I mean, we've got a $6.5 million property on the market right now, a $5 million property, $3 million property. I mean, we of course work in the high end, but we also have $20,000 lots for sale. So we work with folks that we can truly help. We are not demographically or geographically limited. We just want to help people. Now, we were talking just a little bit ago about. So, anyways, thank you for listening to the program and just letting us provide you with the information to help shape your understanding of the market, what's happening right now, so that you, as a listener, that will then become a person involved in a transaction, whether it's on the purchasing or selling or investing side of things, are informed and you know how to win. You know the right questions to ask. You've got reasonable expectations. And so we were just talking about working with investors, and I have to tell you that, yes, we work with brand new investors and coach them on how to invest. We work with seasoned investors that are doing, literally dozens of transactions a month. I worked with basically the lead home flipper out of Vegas for about a year before he just got tired of the Charleston market and said it just wasn't the same and decided to back out of it. But we understand that process really well. But what I want to talk about is how important communication is. Because, like, as an example, if we're working with an investor, that investor needs to understand that, hey, if I bring you a deal, if we have an open and honest conversation about your investment criteria, and we understand it to the point where I should be able to bring you a deal, and so long as it fits your investment criteria, the answer should almost always be, yes, write the offer at this price, because at this price, at these terms, this is a green light investment that fits the criteria. We need to know where that bar is. Can we go all the way up to that bar and still have that investment make sense? I'll tell you that if we bring you a deal that is in line with your investment criteria and you drag your feet on it, that's really only going to happen once with us. We'll give you one more crack at it. But the reality is this, and this is why communication is so important between agents and consumers. I'm just going to call them consumers, buyers, sellers, or investors. If I bring you a deal that is a great investment, my ability to provide you with that opportunity is extremely short-lived, because those deals do not last, especially in a market like this. I have a very short window of opportunity to represent the investor to get that deal. And if you're the type of investor that doesn't really have confidence in the process yet, or doesn't really understand what separates a good investment from a poor investment, and how to analyze and interpret and how we present those opportunities, then you're not going to get very many opportunities. Again, this is just me being honest. We don't have very long to wrap up a deal with that seller before somebody else gets involved, and then we all lose. So as an investor, one of the questions I ask is really just, I take a temperature check. How soon are you ready to start investing? What sort of information do you need? And how can I help fill those gaps in misinformation or lack of understanding about the market, so that we can truly be able to say to one another, hey, Brian, I want you to go out there and I want you to identify and I want you to analyze and present investment properties. I'm not just sending you a link to a property saying, hey, what do you think about this one? I'm sending you a spreadsheet, a breakdown, an investment analysis on that property to say, hey, this one's getting a 30% after-tax ROI. This is a slam dunk. You can go up to this purchase price and still achieve your required rate of return. I suggest you offer X. Are you in or out? If we're not getting responses from investors on deals like that, and honestly, if you're a seasoned investor, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There's really no excuse for not responding to a great investment quickly. And if you're using real estate agents as your lead source, as the way that you find these opportunities and you drag your feet on those opportunities, then that's just it. It just is what it is. We're going to find the folks that are ready, willing, and able to do something about them, or I'm just going to buy them myself. That's just the harsh reality, and that's where communication becomes so important. And all these folks that we work with that have worked with agents in the past, if they have a bad taste in their mouth about the process or about us as an industry, it almost always revolves around lack of communication, lack of understanding of the goals, and just lack of respect. If somebody hires me to do a job, the bare minimum that I should be doing is communicating with them about what we're doing, what's happening, what we've accomplished, what we're working on now, and what we're going to do next. The process of providing people with information once they've hired you should be like step number one. But for some reason, our industry just really struggles with it. And I think that's why a lot of people struggle with our overall value. They see us collecting big checks with very little effort, and I think it frustrates a lot of people. Now, obviously, the checks that we receive get all cut up between taxes and fees and all of our marketing fees and all that good stuff, but that's a different topic. The point that I want to make here is whether you're a buyer or a seller or an investor, there needs to be a very upfront and honest conversation about what that level of communication should look like. You know, one of my favorite questions to ask somebody is, you know, let's say that we, you know, work together and we help you purchase your new home. How would you define a job really well done? Or let me just, so it's something that I took from kind of a broader tactic, which is, let's say that you're getting interviewed for a job. You're being interviewed. You're not interviewing. One of the best questions that you can ask, because I interview, 3-4 people a week to join my team. And obviously we don't hire everybody that we interview, but one of the questions that was asked to me, the person interviewing them, which I just loved, was, you know, if you were to hire me as an agent on your team, a year from now, let's say everything went perfectly according to plan, how do you define somebody that has really excelled in this role? What qualities do they embody? What does their day-to-day look like? What sort of impact have they had to the company? It's a great question to ask. If you're out in your job hunting, you better ask that question to the person interviewing you. I want to ask that same question to people that I'm working with, whether they're buying, selling, or investing in real estate. I want to have an understanding of what they value, because we as agents tend to have this one-size-fits-all kind of dock-in-a-box mentality to working with people. Not everybody values the same thing. You know, if I'm working with somebody and you know, they ask me, well, Brian, why are you different? Why should I hire you? I mean, my response most times is, well, I mean, I'm not sure you should hire me. I think I need to understand what you need better in order to determine whether I have the tools to help you. You know, let's say somebody has had their home on the market, it didn't sell. Maybe they really value communication and hand-holding and just knowing what's going on several times a week. There are plenty of folks like that we accommodate. Maybe they don't really care to hear from me unless there is news. Maybe they don't really care about the communication side of things at all. They just want to pay a little less in commission and get the deal done and move on with their lives. Maybe they really care about the marketing that we're doing. So many different ways of, understanding what's important to that particular client. We as agents need to be leading that conversation and asking those questions, because at the end of the day, what we're really after here is trust. We want you to trust us with our recommendations. There is no trust, in my opinion, without accountability. So the relationship that you have with your agent is incredibly important. I've put together a list of questions for you to ask a real estate agent if you're going to interview them for either becoming your buyer agent or your listing agent. Investors, I don't have a list of questions for you. I can put that together, or we can just have a conversation about what you're looking for. That might be an interesting exercise to go through. But if you'd like the list of questions to ask a real estate agent, the kind of no-holds-barred questions that you should be asking, then text the word interview to 843-400-8009. That's 843-400-8009. That's also my personal cell. I'll reply asking for your name and your email address so I can actually send you this information. So again, text the word interview to 843-400-8009, or you can check us out online at listingsincharleston.com. Stick around for the last few minutes of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com.
More stimulating talk on real estate matters with Brian Beatty next on 1250 WTMA.
1250 WTMA.
Now, the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show continues on Charleston's Big Talker, 1250 WTMA.
Welcome back, folks, to the last few minutes of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com. I want to reserve just a few minutes because we are expanding. We're growing. We could use some help. But we've also, I think, done a really good job over the past several years in honing our craft, our training materials, our ability to turn someone into a successful real estate agent. And we're looking to add some more to the team. So if you've been thinking about getting into real estate, maybe you're in it right now and you're struggling a little bit. There are a lot of agents out there that are struggling that don't want to admit it. They don't really know where to turn. They're not getting the support, the camaraderie, the culture that they used to get from their brokerage, depending upon how involved they are with that agent. There's been a lot of change, I think, in brokerages over the past 18 months or so as we've been dealing with COVID. And I think a lot of people feel stranded. They feel like they're on an island. They're just not progressing. Even if they are, doing a decent number of transactions, they might feel like, after this great reshuffling of people across the country, the well is going to run dry, so to speak. And so I thought I'd just take a few minutes and explain who we look for on our team. First and foremost, when I am hiring somebody, I look for an alignment on mission, vision, values, and work ethic. I want people to have thought through that. I want to ask some very pointed questions about where they see themselves a year from now, why they do what they do, what selling real estate actually helps. What do they accomplish from doing that, aside from the income associated with it? What do they value? I need to make sure that no matter what, they are a culture fit within my organization. Because don't get me wrong, I am proud, as you know what, of our transactions and the numbers and the stats and all the great things that people could look at to analyze and interpret our effectiveness as a company. But I'm most proud of our culture. I'm most proud of what we stand for and the people on our team. And so the values that we look for are people with courage, people that have courage to fail, courage to succeed past the point of comfort, courage to innovate. We're a very innovative, kind of tech-forward company. I look for people with a passion and a positive attitude. They encourage others. They're ambitious. They have a servant heart. They have this all-in mentality. I also look for people with emotional intelligence, which seems to be running a little short these days. People that review their personal and professional strengths, their actions, their impact on others. Integrity for me is just, you have to have it. You have to be honest and accountable and trustworthy and authentic and only create win-win situations. You also need to have humility. Success is earned through the trust of our clients and support of our family and team. And at the end of the day, we want you to be results-oriented and competitive. Sales, in my opinion, has always been whoever gives the most value wins. So I want people that are driven to excellence, that don't settle, that are unapologetic about wanting big things in life. And if that's you, regardless of whether you're happy at your own job right now, if you're curious to get into real estate, we have had folks that have come from all walks of life that have made six figures their first year in real estate. It is absolutely possible. And if that's something you'd like to talk about, then give me a call, 843-400-8009. That's 400-8009. Check us out online at listingsincharleston.com. There's a careers tab there for you to click on. Thanks so much. You guys enjoy your weekend. Thanks for listening to the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA.
Join us for another edition of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show next Saturday morning at 9 and Sunday morning at 10. Contact Brian Beatty online at listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com. Or call him at 843-400-8009. That's 843-400-8009.